I'm just going to dig around here in the garden itself. There's all kinds of stuff in this soil. I want to get down into the deepest stuff. Way down, underneath this coarsest stuff is what I'm looking for. This is what we want right here. Y'all can see that. That's really, really, really broken down. I'm going to take a pretty good handful of this stuff. It's going to go inside this baggie right here. My filter bag. I want the stuff from way down low. Doesn't look like compost or anything. All you see is some shiny minerals and humus. Okay? So in order for us to do this properly, we want a good bit of this surrogate humus. Within this humus, there's also going to be some hyphae from some mycology. Quite possibly there could be some hyphae from some bacteria as well. There's plenty of actinobacteria in wood chip gardens. It's not the end of the world. Actually quite helpful in some cases. Anyway, I want to get like a pound of this stuff. Really, if I could get about a pound of this, I'd be happy. Because we're also going to add some worm castings to it. And then, we're just going to, for the most part, cover this back up so somebody doesn't walk back here, step in a hole, and get hurt. Okay? Now, I'll turn the camera over and I'll show you what this looks like. It's really, 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 really rich stuff. Okay? This doesn't even look like compost anymore. I'd say there's probably less than 10% of the original media, parent media, that, I mean, aside from a couple of root pieces and some other things that might have got mixed in, it's basically humus. Okay? And we're going to go ahead and head over and do the next step. We're going to put about 1 gallon to 1.5 gallons of water in here. I'm sorry offhand, I don't know what the metric equivalent to that is. But roughly 1/5 this entire container. I won't need much more than that. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and add some of these, well, I guess that's Ace Hardware supplied worm castings, or maybe it was Tractor Supply, I'm not sure. Got a scoop of them in here. We're going to go ahead and put that inside the lingerie bag, the filter bag, the mesh bag. The whole bit of it. When we're done making this humic, fulvic, worm casting extract, all of this media right here will ultimately get put back into either compost tea or sent to our compost piles. Now that I've got the bag zipped up, you can see all we're going to do is shake it off so there's no debris on it. And then we're just going to enter into this water like a bunch of times, and you're going to see it's going to start to get browner and browner and browner. It takes a few minutes. I would recommend that if you want a really strong or more concentrated humic fulvic acid, that you do this for no less than 15 minutes. If you want a concentration that's not quite as strong, you can cut that off at half the time. Basically, the amount of time that you spend dunking this in and out of the water below is what's going to determine the ultimate finished concentration of the humic fulvic acid blend. Worm castings are in there. There's some biology in there. There's some acids in there. There's some good stuff in there. We're happy if that conveys to our final liquid, because we're going to use this. We're going to use this in our gardens. We can use this in our indoor grows. We can use this anywhere where we have chlorine water. We can use this where we want to reduce the amounts of salt in our soil sets. Maybe you have a planter inside and you've been watering it with really, really hard water that was very, very salty. Over the past few years, you notice your plants are yellowing and wilting, having a hard time to photosynthesize. Well, if you look really closely, you might find that there's probably salt crystals, or there's probably salts or chlorine in your water. The humic and fulvic acid together is a great way to mitigate that. And if it's in the soils, okay, if you've got those salts in the soils in any kind of abundance, you want to make small applications of this alongside of your regular watering to those pots, to those garden beds, to those, well, wherever the plant is, so that you can start to move some of those salts out. While I'm doing this, let's talk about a couple of precautions that I like to take. You can see the size of this bag it's pretty big. It holds a lot of laundry. I like it like that because that keeps my hand away from, well, what's in the pail right there. In the past, I've gotten some of that stuff on my hands. I'd be working in the garden, working with those soils in particular without gloves, and it will wash the acids right off of your skin. And if it happens to be kind of cold like it is where I am right now, that can lead to, splits and breaks in your skin and unintended consequences. So we're really not trying to dry ourselves out so much. This stuff, if you've got some little bit of salty sweat on your skin, it'll wash it right off. What else can I say? We got to store it in something. I like to store it in a translucent container. My favorite sort of container like that is the old white vinegar containers. I like them because there's no chemical transfer. They were already holding something acidic, and it's translucent, so it doesn't let a lot of light in. We really don't want that. This stuff will last a long time. It'll last longer if you don't put the worm castings in it. But honestly, once you start using this for your issues, if you truly have issues, you're probably going to go through a lot of this. And what do I mean by a lot of this? Well, you can see it's already getting much darker and more concentrated. So the more concentrated it gets, the less I need to use. When I get a super, super concentrated batch like this, I can use less than a teaspoon per gallon. But if I'm hasty and I don't take the extra time to make a really good, strong blend of this, I might need to use more. And if that's the case, I might need to use a tablespoon, or maybe in a 5-gallon pail if I'm trying to neutralize some salt or some chlorine in that water. I might use as much as an ounce or two of this. I'd rather use a little more than use too little in that case. All right? So, there you kind of have it. It's been about 6 minutes, and you can already tell it's really, really dark. I'm going to go ahead and sort of make this just a bit stronger and run this routine for another 4 or 5 minutes, and then we're going to catch up. All right, so we're almost done. The sun is starting to set. The color looks really, really great for the stuff. And I want to tell y'all just a little bit about why we're doing this today. I've actually made this humic acid extract like this a few times, especially some of the growers that work with me a little more regularly. It comes up, the need for it comes up, and this particular video is in response to one of my viewers, someone who watched the other humic acid extract video, the one where we use the heat process. This is a cold extract process. The biology that this soil contains is going to convey to the solution. So this is really a living extract, and it's meant to be used this season in particular. If I don't need it all, I'll probably share some with some of my other friends who are also growers, spread the love a little bit. And this will store for up to a year if you put it in that type of container like I described before. If it's clear, it's going to let more light through, and if there happen to be any spores or anything like that, maybe any algae already in the container, there's a good chance that in some areas it's going to turn green. So, keep your solutions clean, keep them clear, and use them. It's not really a use or a lose kind of a thing, but you really do want to use it. If you were already struggling with something before, if it's sitting up on a shelf, it's not going to do anybody any good. So let's get your water clear and chlorine free. Let's make it so you can do more stuff faster. You all know you can remove the chlorine from your water if you let it sit or you aerate it. You can do those things. You can pitch it back and forth between 2 vessels. That works as well. But this is a simple way to just take your city's municipal water, put it in another vessel, and then put a few drops of this, a tablespoon of this into it if you're not that sure. And it's going to mitigate that issue for you. You're going to be able to go ahead and use that water to water with. The salts are not going to be a problem for the roots of your plants. I often add this I make liquid applications of fertilizer. If I'm making them in haste and I have any concern about what might be in there, sometimes I'll just put a teaspoon of this, in a 2-gallon batch, and away we go. If it's really, really hot and my plants are stressing, tend to lean on the fulvic acid side a little more. I'll put it on the plants then. It seems to help with that. If those of you who have tried that before, I want you to go ahead and tell me about it in the comments. Tell me what your experience has been. I love talking about this stuff. So, all right, let's go ahead and let's turn around, let's look and see what we got. Can kind of see sun is setting, and you can pretty well see into the liquid. Pretty dark. I'd say all in all, this is probably about maybe 6-7 minutes worth of dunking, gently just like this. And we're going to go ahead and call this a wrap. Basically, at this point, all I want to do with this is let it drip out as best as it can. And then I'm going to show you where I put mine. But it can go back into your compost. It can go into compost teas. It can go into pretty much anywhere. I mean, you can actually mix it into your soils right out of the gate. It'll help build better soil. You can use it indoor or out. There's not going to be anything bad growing in this stuff. I can promise you that. Whatever is in this media right here in that bag is going to be good for your garden. In my case, I like to put this stuff in my compost tea. So I'm going to basically just walk it over to where I already have an existing batch of compost tea. And I'm going to dunk it in there for about a day. After it's been in there for about a day, it's going to get transferred to my compost piles, or it'll get entered into another batch of soils that I may make. Either way, we're always going to reuse, recycle, repurpose this media. It's just simply too valuable to toss it away, and you would never want to do that. All right, so here you can see my compost tea zone. The pump is actually on. There's IBC totes that are here. We use these for, well, all sorts of things related to this, especially regarding applications on large scale. But anyway, this is what I typically use right here. It's just a 5-gallon pail. I'm going to flip the lid off. And y'all can see inside is basically some nice brown compost tea. There's some gum-free leaves rolling around in there. And all I'm going to do is sit this in there, just like that. It's that simple. So it's purposeful here because there's all kinds of good biology inside that soil or humus and the worm castings, and nothing would please me more than to put that in there. I've found nematodes, beneficial bacteria feeding nematodes, in worm castings before, so there's really no reason to think they wouldn't be there now, and I'd be really elated to find them in my compost tea when I go ahead and examine this under the microscope. That's it, folks. Now all we got to do is put it in a jar. So here's a perfect example of one humic acid run that was made the other day. It's much lighter. Even if I give it a little bit of a stir, it'll still be lighter than today's. Okay. The difference? This one right here does not have worm castings. This one right here does. That's basically it. It's a good idea to give it a little bit of stir before you go ahead and start pouring it. That way the humic solids will transfer as well. There's benefit in having that. If I'm lucky, I'll get most of it in there. You want to keep it from freezing, or at least keep it away from freezing temperatures as well. I think the last thing that I'd like to suggest is that while I don't have any proof to this notion, there is a chance that this might be somewhat therapeutic if someone elects to introduce some really bad salts to your area. I'm not going to call it by name, but it sounds like Groundup. And if somebody uses Groundup by your garden, you're probably going to know about it. If it turns out to kill any of your plants or make them sick, you're going to want to chase those salts from the soil. You're not going to want to leave them in there. They're destructive. Well, today's my lucky day. It's like we got most of it in there. The rest will go in here. And then right there, we'll put the name of it right there. Worm casting, humic acid, fulvic acid. Write a book if you have to. Put it in, just initials if need be. You can even put a skull and crossbones on it. That's a good idea. Whatever you choose to do, I suggest you keep it away from reach of children, young children in particular, unless they're already schooled in how to use it. Okay, there we go. I don't know if y'all can see that. You probably can't. My handwriting is really terrible, but I labeled it in hieroglyphics that I understand, and that's pretty much it. Okay, so in a wrap, it's very, very simple to make. even now, I've only been shooting this rough video for 17 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and edit it down so it's not quite so long. You know, we'll shrink it all down. But this is what you're after right here, folks. If it sits on the shelf, you know, for a few days, it'll separate. Give it a shake, and then you can go out and ratio it out however you see fit. You can treat a large container of water just as easily as you can treat a small container of water. So often, I'll be perfectly honest with y'all, I just use that measure right there, the cap. That right there is going to probably go in a 4-gallon blend of whatever I might be spraying on my plants. And like I was saying before, if one of my neighbors unleashed, well, fumes of fury, then usually what I'll do is I'll lay some more of this out and try to protect my plants and prevent the salts that happen to be in the, well, the atmosphere from damaging my plants. I don't know what to say about that. Not calling anyone out, but it is what it is, folks. Life goes on. But fruit and root yourself, use some of this stuff, label it, make sure you keep it away from kids, keep it from freezing, put it in your water if you're using it for houseplants, put it in your water if you have chlorine, put it in your water if, well, if you see general poor growth, chlorosis, anywhere where you might already be seeing signs of nutrient lock, or you're already suspecting that there may be an inundation of salts, maybe you were subjected to a typhoon or something crazy like that. Stranger things have happened, but thus is life, folks. Protect yourself, protect your plants, protect your families, protect your food supply. I don't know what else to say. Peace, like, sub, share, do all that good stuff. Get back in the garden.